Hi there, and welcome to another interview. Today I've got the fabulous Toby with me, and I'm going to ask Toby the question I ask absolutely everybody. Hey Toby, why did you become carnivore?
Hey Stephen, I became carnivore because I was presented with a dramatic choice of either get my health back or I don't know what I would have done. I had a choice and I chose to get my health back. Um, it kind of goes way back to when I was a kid. I kind of grew up quite a sick kid. I was probably fed antibiotics quite early on in life. I was delivered by C-section, so they automatically tend to put you on a course of antibiotics, and I was a pretty ill child, so ended up on quite a lot of antibiotics through my younger years. Developed a lot of food allergies as a result in the first few years of my life, which I dealt with all the way until now, kind of with fear of eating out and really struggling in today's society with eating and wondering how I was gonna have a social life or anything like that. And through most of my childhood, I had things like hydronephrosis, which is kind of underdeveloped and water in the kidneys, and all sorts of little things like that that caused me to be really quite ill. And I kind of got to my teenage years and decided that I wanted to get healthy and fit, like the mainstream tells you should be, and the models in all the clothing shops show you that you should be. And so decided to start working out, and so went to the gym and started by default getting into the habit of calorie counting. Not religiously at first, but kind of slowly just seeing loads of influencers on the internet, how the best way to work out, can't out-train a bad diet, all that kind of thing. And I was training probably once or twice a day, fitting it around work, just in the gym, nothing crazy. But then I started to get more, I couldn't really see the results that I wanted. I was lifting all the heavy weights, but wasn't doing anything. I was having my protein, I was cutting the fat out, and nothing was really working. So I did that for about a year and a half and didn't see any results. And then I changed jobs. And at the end of that, it was quite a stressful period, and we went out for a big meal, and I kind of got rather drunk. And the next day, I was in A&E with really serious bowel contortions. It was really weird. It was like my intestines were literally turning themselves in somersaults. It was probably the most serious pain I've ever had in my life. I was vomiting anything I had, so whether it was water, food, whatever, it was coming straight back up within 30 seconds to a minute, and it was just the worst pain I've ever experienced in my life. So I went to A&E, and they operated on me to try and see if there was an obstruction or anything that was kind of blocking anything, and they couldn't find anything. So they had a good rummage around, and by the time I was out the operating theatre, I'd kind of gone down to a normal size because there'd been lots of inflammation and swelling, and was no longer in pain, and woke up and I felt absolutely fine. A few days in hospital, and went home, kind of carried on doing what I had been doing before, thought nothing of it. And so but this time I went worse. I thought I've clearly done something. I'm not working hard enough. I'm not well enough. So I'm going to punish myself a bit more. So I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, do 5 to 8 kilometers in the morning, first thing, come back, have some kind of porridge and protein powder that I'd weighed out and stuck in the fridge the night before. And then I'd have, that was about 8 o'clock. And then midday, I'd have some sardines on bread that I'd baked, and going down the whole grain rubbish. And then in the evening, I'd have bolognese and kind of low carb, high protein pasta, whatever the hell that means. And I kind of thought I was doing the best thing, and I suffered from body dysmorphia. So I would look at myself in the mirror and genuinely think I was, I was really, really unhealthy, and that I needed to lose weight. So that, combined with calorie counting, led me down the road of seriously restricting eating. I could work out really, really well. I could do a fairly decent 5K time, but I was still getting myself into a 1,000 calorie a day deficit, which was not good at all. I kind of slowly, I think my body decided to start shutting down. I got to a point where I had this one, what I thought was a roll of fat on my body that I could not shift at all. And I kind of, cut to the point where I was barely eating anything at all. And I go to bed hungry just to try and get rid of this one little bit of fat to get some abs, because that's all I really wanted as a younger guy. I wanted abs and wanted to roll around on the beach with a six pack, but it wasn't despairing. But part of that was every month I had, just for a night, a flare up of the same gut issue I had in the previous 6 months. So once a month, pretty much religiously, it would flare up. I would feel absolutely terrible for the entire night, be sick, kind of really, really struggling, and then it would resolve itself by morning. I wouldn't get any sleep, but it would be absolutely fine. So it got to a point where pretty much this time last year was my final one where I said, no, do you know what? I cannot continue with these pains, this cycle of not knowing what is doing this to me. So I decided to look at what could be causing all sorts of inflammation in my gut, and came across kind of low FODMAP diets, and I was looking at everything, whether it be raw vegan or anything that would come up, and lo and behold, the algorithms brought up carnivore, and a load of different, like Sean Baker, I think, was the first one that cropped up, and then others alongside, Saladino and Chafee and yourself, Richard Smith, and kind of I was effectively faced with a choice: is either stay as I am and stay, getting these flare ups and feeling really terrible, or make a change. And how I made that change was, it's either, okay, go fully vegan or go fully carnivore, and I couldn't face eating vegetables for the rest of my life. So I was like, do you know what? I don't mind a steak. I'll go and eat steak. So my Christmas dinner, I made the switch on Christmas Day. My Christmas dinner was like, right, I need to make sure I do a cut everything out that isn't the most easily absorbable food. Yeah, kind of turkey was on the menu at work for Christmas. So my Christmas dinner was just plain turkey. And so I was working over the Christmas period. So I did about a week of just doing cold meats, kind of hams, corned beef, turkey, over into the new year, and finished work and went home. And I realized that in that week, the piece of what I thought was fat in the mirror had disappeared. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I was horrified by what I saw. I looked emaciated and gaunt. What I saw was all the inflammation that my body had been producing to try and keep me alive had disappeared in a week, and I looked anorexic. It was horrendous. And I decided from that, right, no, I need to really refeed myself. Then went into more research about the lack of nutrition in a lot of what I was doing, and the science behind calorie counting, and the realities of what happens if you cut calories sufficiently. And yeah, since then there's been a bit of a journey on carnivore. It was the most amazing initial experience. As I say, I felt a million times better in the first week. My mental clarity was insane. It was like, people use the analogy of the fog lifting, but it really, really was. I realized how normal life was as if walking through a soup before, and all of a sudden positivity, energy was brilliant. It was euphoria. And as a kid, my parents used to have to try and disguise meat in anything that they could to try and get me to eat it, whether it was fish fingers or fish cakes or burgers or sausages or whatever. But suddenly I found I could eat a steak, and my God, it tasted incredible. I came home to my mum's house for New Year, and this was my first kind of experience of proper carnivore, and I went and had an enormous tomahawk steak, about 1.5 kilos of tomahawk steak, and then went back for 500 grams of T-bone, and then had a dry aged ribeye on top of that, all in one meal. And it just kept tasting incredible. I'm pretty sure it's down to the fact that I'd been so nutritionally deficient for so long that I just incredible. And it's not been the easiest ride since then. I think I kind of weighed myself before I started all of this, and I was down at 52 kilos at 6% body fat, just by restriction. And I still thought I looked bad. And then, over the last year, because it's my 1 year anniversary, if you like, next week, I've gone up by 12 kilos, and on the side, a bit of body fat alongside it. I'm now sat at about 13-14% body fat. So that has been a huge adjustment over this year, because before I saw myself very differently to how I see myself now. And before, that would have always been a bad thing. But now it's a sign of health, and I feel a billion times better and have had no resurgence of anything that came before. So yeah, that's kind of a long and short of my story.
Yeah, it's fabulous. And it's really nice to hear you be so honest about everything. So, one of the connections, we do coaching sessions together. So, I think this, but let's put it out there. I think, when you start eating carnivore, not only does your brain fog go, but how you see yourself is actually true. 55 kilos is underweight, 6% body fat is sort of bodybuilder sort of limits, really. And you would probably did look at yourself and think, look at this layer of fat around my belly, but you probably didn't really have that, So I think your honesty is the thing I've really liked about you since I've met you, and I met you face to face at the PHC Public Health Collaboration. It was really great to meet you. The operation, was it a kidney problem? What was the reason for the operation in the end? Have we ever got to the bottom of that?
Never got to the bottom of what actually was causing it. They did scans beforehand and couldn't see anything, and they thought there might be an obstruction that they couldn't see. So they did a keyhole, and they kind of had a look around and stuck a camera in there and had a look around, and there was nothing that they could find that would cause the pain and the inflammation. That was the end of that. They kind of sent me back home having, I wasn't in any pain, and they said, right, well, if it happens again, come and see us. And yeah, I'd get those flare-ups, but it would never, I always said, if it is still there in the morning, I'll go back and get it checked out, but it never was. But for all that night, it would be, the worst pain you can imagine. Imagine your guts doing somersaults. It's just the most horrendous pain. But yeah, as you say, I think it's when you do go carnivore, there is a fog lifting. It does feel like a miracle. I know it's kind of a bit cliche to say that, and everyone goes, oh, it's not a miracle. It really feels that way for sure. But I think what's important to talk about as well is it's not necessarily a miracle all of the time. So a lot of what people will say is that a lot of people get miraculous results. They get incredible weight loss in the first few weeks, or they really transform their health. But I think initially, for me anyway, the initial period was a great degree of healing and mental stability, because I used to suffer really badly with seasonal depression and obviously body image issues, but they very quickly went away when I transitioned. But with that comes other challenges, in that I then have to enable myself to view me differently, because I'm not necessarily going to look the same, because the body recomposition is phenomenal. It takes a lot of time, but it is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting thing also, because outwardly people judge you. Because I've worked out and I have a fair bit of muscle. People might see me in a suit and think, he doesn't look particularly lean. And then I'll wear a short, this happened at the PHC, I'll wear a short sleeve shirt and they go, oh, you're actually quite muscly. So other people's perception can change as well, because when I first met you, I thought, well, pretty lean. I'm being honest now, and I've spoken to you about this, but I think, while we're doing this video, I actually said to you, wow, you look really good. And I can remember you saying, what you look like it doesn't tell you everything. And so that shows that you were already aware that actually you were probably lean, not fat, and needing to lose fat. And actually you needed a bit more muscle to be healthy and have a healthy level of fat. I think one of the things I always talk about is when people calorie restrict, if you change the word calorie to nutritionally restrict, you're not just counting calories, you're counting nutrients, and you're deliberately saying to your body, I'm going to underfeed you. I'm going to underfeed you protein. I'm going to underfeed you fats deliberately every single day. you're going to have a deficit of these essential nutrients. And that's why I hate the word calorie so much, is because it doesn't really cut it at all. And I think it's one of the biggest problems out there is people still calorie count. And the word deficit should make people go, I'm deliberately going to undereat something I actually need. So that's the nuance of it. And of course, when people talk about macronutrients, if you look at the macronutrients of a tree, there's 3 macronutrients, and it's not proteins and fats and carbs, it's potassium and a couple of other things, and they have micronutrients. Well, when we say macronutrients, it's the nutrients that you need a lot of. Well, there's only 2. It's protein and fats. Carbohydrates are not a macronutrient. They are something that people have decided is a macronutrient because they're telling us we need lots of them. So anyway, sorry, I'm on my hobby horse about that because you mentioned 1,000 calorie deficit. Wow. That's incredible. And you still retain some fat, which I actually do believe, because the body goes into starvation and it clings onto that fat, doesn't it?
100%. That's exactly everything that people describe about kind of restricting to the point where your body starts shutting down things that it doesn't need is totally what happened to me. I could not shift, whatever I did, I could not shift this little bit of fat that I thought I had around my midriff. And it was just it hurt me mentally. Whatever I did, I couldn't shift it. And I think, you touched on an interesting subject there about nutrient deficiency. I think the word calorie disassociates everybody from the nutritional value. I think the idea that there is something separated from the nutrition gives everybody a simple equation, because that's what we like to do. We like to resolve equations and it makes sense in our head, but really our bodies are a lot more complicated than a simple equation. I've never asked my stomach to do maths. I don't know if you have, but it doesn't really work. So, I mean, my brain couldn't really do maths either, but it's kind of, it's a massive thing. It really does starve you of nutrients. And when you suddenly then realize that everything you'd been taught as a kid and everything you'd been told through your life, that, you have to have a balanced diet and you have to, it's all an equation. You just got to balance the equation, is utter rubbish, because when you actually have proper nutrition, it is the nicest tasting thing. People say, how the hell do you just eat meat and salt? Because I spend most of my time on the lion diet at the moment. I have fish and seafood occasionally, but most of the time it's beef, salt and water, because that's what makes me feel the best. People look at me and go, how the hell can you just eat beef and salt? Like, it's just not natural. You need spices, or you need this or that, because it's just horrible. But you go, not when it tastes like it does to me, because I know what nutrition tastes like, and it tastes incredible. I don't want spices. I don't want to get rid of the flavor of this meat. It's the nicest tasting thing I've ever eaten, and that's coming from a kid who never ate a steak as a kid because he hated the taste. He refused to eat meat, and my mum spent hours and hours fighting with me to try and get me to eat my meat, and I wouldn't go anywhere near it if it didn't have at least a litre of ketchup spread all over it. It's like, and to go to this where all I eat is beef, salt and water, it's revolutionary. But it comes with its challenges as well. I think because I've been refeeding myself, I eat quite a lot. I say to people that my first few months on carnivore, I was easily eating 3 to 3.5 kilos of meat a day. I was following a lot of the narrative of eating until you feel full or it stopped tasting good, and it just kept tasting good. So I kept eating it and eating it and eating it, and I'd go back for more and more and more. It got quite expensive. It really did. You do that with ribeye and it does become expensive, but there are ways to make it cheaper, and eventually the hunger tails off when you start getting your nutrition back. But it comes and goes in waves. Some days I'll eat lots, some days I'll eat not much at all. It's really is a journey. I think a lot of the narrative doesn't talk about the journey, because it's not perfect for everybody, and it is a bit of a roller coaster, but it's fun.
Yes, and it is good fun, and it is a tasty way of eating. I will get into your ups and downs in a second, but I just want to nail this thing about a balanced diet, because I always shout at cows, don't just eat that grass. You've got to have variety. And I'm the mad one in the zoos saying to the lions, put that meat down. You've got to have variety. In nature, people don't seem to realize we're part of nature. We're an animal, right? All other animals eat a species appropriate diet. And when you feed them the wrong thing, they really, really struggle. So, if you take the cow example, if you start feeding cows meat, that's not going to turn out very well. And if you force lions to eat grass, that's not going to turn out very well. So we're not even saying anything that isn't just basic common sense. But the reason I wanted you on is, well, firstly, because you're a nice guy and you've got a good story and all that, but also, you're quite happy to talk about the things that have been difficult for you, because it's not an echo chamber. I like my interviews to be real, and it has been challenging every so often. So do you want to just cover those a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I think going from a position of being so realistically quite lean and coming to it from a health perspective of regaining my health, that's been an interesting topic, because it's not talked about enough. I don't think the people who come at this from an eating disordered background or anorexia background, because putting on fat makes it sound like a bad thing. A lot of people come at this for weight loss and to see the number on the scale go down. But when the scale goes the other way, it can be quite distressing, especially for somebody who didn't like seeing the scale move upwards at all. And I think putting on fat for to go from 6% to 14% is a big jump. Certainly for me, and would be a jump for a lot of people. But part of the process is acknowledging that you need that baseline of fat to heal. I really feel like there's a lot of healing that's gone on in my body over the last year, because there was a lot of damage. I've been damaging it for years. I hadn't been eating properly really since I was a kid. I had allergies and all this kind of stuff. So I'd been nutritionally deficient for years. So there was so much healing to do that it does, it can put on fat for a lot of people. And it's not all as simple as it is to be.
Now, what did you, apart from the physicality of seeing extra fat and trying to get away from feeling, well, that's really bad, what else has happened? Have you had any sort of toilet issues or hydration problems and sort of things?
Yeah, 100%. I think when we first come into this lifestyle, we always experiment a little bit with the amount of fat that we can and can't handle. And as I'm somebody who's pretty much eliminated fat out of my diet because weight is 9 calories a gram rather than 4, so wasted calories. I avoided fat like the plague. So to suddenly introduce fat in copious amounts was quite dramatic, for sure. It brings about all sorts of toilet issues that leave you running for a loo every so often if you overdo it. So yeah, for the first few months there was that, working out a fat level, waiting for my fat level to upregulate, which took a long time. So I'd say for the first 6 months at least, I was struggling with kind of trying to get anything solid, if that makes sense. And even to this day, if I do end up with too much fat, or if I undercook something like mince or something to undercook it a bit, then yeah, it might well upset me a little bit and send me running for the loo. So it's not always a miracle, and it's not miraculous. There are trials and tribulations to this, and things that it's a journey. You've got to work it out. There's no textbook that's going to tell you what your body will do to heal, and what dramatic experiences you might well experience whilst doing it. As long as you feel better and and you look better, it's incredible. Because I was gaunt as anything. I looked like a skeleton, and then to be myself again is just incredible.
What about your friends and family? Have they noticed an uptick in your mental acuity and everything?
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest change that everybody else saw in me was my confidence. I think before my personality was quite reserved and quite kind of not submissive, but yeah, quite kind of self-conscious and quite nervous. But since going carnivore, my confidence has gone through the roof. I'm a totally different human. I'm much more much more focused. I can focus for hours, and as long as I've got a drive, I can go for hours on one thing, or I can, really think about things before I have a conversation about things. I'm much more considered, careful. It's like viewing the world in kind of a third person. You see yourself and your interactions almost like an outer body experience. I know it sounds really wacko, but almost like an outer body experience. It really is quite an.
Yeah, I actually don't think that sounds wacko. I think somebody made me laugh the other day. If you want to see the difference between a carnivore and a vegan, go and watch some vegan videos and then watch some carnivore ones, and just make your own mind up. And I think that's the thing. We're very self-aware and quite happy to, talk calmly about things and look at the science. And it does give you that ability to step back and look at the overall picture and consider other people's views. I think this is the thing. I think we're so dysregulated with our eating. Actually, it isn't wacko. It isn't weird to be able to do that. That's the right thing to be able to do, to take a step back and think, well, what's their point of view? Let's listen to it. Because even though I disagree with it, possibly they might say something that will open up my mind and I'll change my opinion. Well, I don't think that's very common. I don't think that's common in society now, for people to say, take an opinion, take a stance on it, and then listen to others and actually change or even adapt a little bit. I mean, I think that's a good thing, Toby, to be honest. And you've been very underplayed about this because, we've done a few calls. Has there been much value to having consultations then?
100%. I think in this space, it is still quite new. People like yourself who put these interviews out and success stories are brilliant, but they don't necessarily relate to every individual person. You can find themes that are very similar to your own, or very, intricate details that you might relate to. But ultimately, your journey is going to be so different to anybody else's. Everybody's experience is different on this. And coaching for sure gave me that almost shoulder to lean on, that I knew that I was doing the right thing. I think what we do is so outside of the mainstream. It's not really something you can Google. It's not, if you go and Google, help, I've had diarrhea for the past 3 days, they'll tell you to go to hospital. They're not going to talk to you about the fact that it might be that you've just had a little bit too much fat and to dial it back a bit. It's so outside of the mainstream that you sometimes need people inside the community to lean on and just check that everything is normal, and you're not doing it alone, because that, certainly from a mental aspect, is really, really important. And I'm incredibly fortunate. My mother went carnivore at the same time I did, so we've been kind of going through this together. But coaching, my experience to hers is so dramatically different, and coaching gave me that shoulder to lean on just to guide me through.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And your mum going carnivore, she wouldn't do that unless she saw in you. It's working for Toby, so I think I'll give that a go. And I think Google is the bane of my life, and so is ChatGPT. I'm going to be releasing an ebook over Christmas which illustrate how ChatGPT will keep apologizing when you pull it up for saying the wrong things. For instance, what's the 10 top sources of iron from, food sources of iron? It will always be everything but the best 10 sources, which of course is meat and eggs and those sort of things, because we want heme iron, not non-heme iron. So yeah, I'm glad there was some value in the consultations, and I'm glad that that's out there now, because it is sometimes so simple. You just need to drop the plants, drop the carbohydrates, eat the meat, eat the fat and all that. But your body's got to adapt. 30 years of not doing that, it's not instantly going to say, wow, this is great. So I think, thanks for saying about that. You were talking to somebody now who's on the fence about it. They're like, oh, this is another one of these non-verifiable BS stories, because I get that in the comments. I mean, you're just a guy. You're not trying to make money out of this. You're just telling me what's happened. Somebody's sitting on the fence about carnivore. What do you say to them? They're sort of, yeah, maybe I should try it. What would you say to convince them, do you think, to try it?
Try it. I think that sounds such a cliche, but just try it. Start. I think there is so much fear mongering around it. Like all sorts of things. And actually, what's 30 days in the long run of somebody's life? What's a month? Really, a month passes by faster than you can think. And so if you're on the fence, give it a go. You're not going to have a heart attack in a month if you still believe in that. It's really, really not as bad as you think it's going to be. Give it a go. See what happens. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work. But try it. You won't know until you try.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's ever so good. So I've done my 30 minutes with you. Is there anything that you'd like to add that you feel we should cover that we haven't?
No, I think it's just amazing to get the message out there and to talk about things in such an honest and open way, especially the things that aren't quite as good as the world would have you believe, the trials, the tribulations, because a lot of the stuff out there is about the miracle responses to carnivore, which happen, but not everybody experiences that. A lot of people have troubles, and to be able to talk about the troubles and issues that some people have is a really good opportunity, and thank you very much for it.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.